Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now I am burning the midnight oil. Now it's actually 2 a.m. here, but I still decided to try and record this video, and it is going to be a while, so if I do make some mistakes, please do excuse me. However, we must plow on with our ranking videos. And so far we have ranked Cosmic and Skill. A lot of you guys were not big fans of my skill ranking list, but unfortunately that is where current game trends are. Defenders are very significant, and skill class doesn't have much else to offer. At the very least, I bet if we would tally up the total amount of Korgs and Killmongers in a 2-much rank, I would be willing to bet that for kind of like competitive players, for players that do play Alliance or in Battlegrounds, all three of those champions would exceed the amounts of, shields ranked, who a lot of people thought should have made the top 10. Either way, we are moving on to the tech class. And again, techs are in significantly better place, and there are a lot of strong tech champions. I do think that they kind of struggle a bit with the tippy top of the class. We do have several champions that are very strong, but not quite necessarily at the level of some of the classes that we're going to be discussing later. That said, tech class is also one of the classes that is least affected with the champions not being released as 7 stars. Here we can see in the old tech top 10 list, we have Future Ant-Man and Ghost, and that's it, and Nimrod as well. And that's it. But, Ghost and Nimrod kind of barely made the list back then as well. And from the very top, it's only Future Ant-Man. That's a massive change from Cosmic and Skill class, where most of their top 5 is effectively missing. So, tech is overall doing better, especially this season Battlegrounds as well, where some techs just go crazy on defense. Right. All that said, keep in mind that this is a mixture of current game relevance and trends, as well as my own personal thoughts and opinions. We are not merely looking at the champions' abilities on a blank page. We are looking at which champions currently are and have been performing the best, are getting ranked, are getting chased, are the ones that you do chase to give your catalysts to, are the champions that you will invest your rarest resources, your 7-star awakening gems and 7-star signature stones in. Those are the champions that we are ranking here, not necessarily champion X, who is amazing in incursions and story content, again, because those are the types of content that can be cleared with vast majority of the champions or large variety of the champions. We are primarily here valuing the meta relevance, the champions that you end up facing most in Battlegrounds and Alliance, or the champions that you end up using most for challenge modes and so on and so forth. The champions that people default to when losing matters. So, let's get on with it, shall we? First and foremost, obviously, several notable honorable mentions here. First one will be Future Ant-Man. He is one of the top tech champions, still relevant, still visible, but unfortunately does not exist as a 7-star, so he does not qualify for this list. Second, we're going to mention Ghost, which I do think could potentially make a comeback as a 7-star, but definitely also has struggled with the AI inconsistencies and just the recent champion design. Still obviously very powerful champion in the game. Then we need to kind of talk about old tech king as well, Nimrod, who has kind of found himself out of the job. Well, largely thanks to Kabam, kind of, releasing a handful of defenders that turn out to be, the best, basically, or the champions. Like, he can't do Dust, he can't do Onslaught, he can't do a few more mutants like Bishop that we see frequently. And that has been kind of enough to stop him, because especially as 6-star, he's not potent or fast enough to contend with a lot of other tech champions anymore. So he was on the downhill, but not being out as a 7-star hurts him even more and disqualifies him from this list. Special shout out is going to go to, where is that, a little armored, no, but gun blazing free, Punch at 2099. I think you could easily include him in the list as well, I think one of the things that is slightly talking against him is, the lack of general availability. But for most part, I think he's a very solid champion that you could make an argument for making here in the top 10 as well. Really wish he would work at his best without the color tech mastery. That would definitely make him significantly more potent, in my opinion, too. But definitely great champion. Besides that, a lot of people have kind of started praising Sentinel. And recently he's been getting quite a lot of hype. And I'll be absolutely honest, I think he is a lot better. I think he is a solid champion. However, so far, on a personal level, and I do understand that that will be meta relevant and stuff like that, I don't think I have lost a round to Sentinel. Like, if you do have access to any dot that he's not immune to, you're just flying past him for the most part. Like, I do know that the current Battlegrounds meta is very, very nuky, but even without that, I think he's going to be slightly better, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be up there. And again, offensively, when we went over the matchups and the fact that he kind of relies on his shocks and incinerates, that's not good for a tech champion. That kind of takes him out of Havoc's, bishops and onslaughts, and a ton of different matches that the tech champion should be great against. And maybe he makes it there. I think there's an argument for him again on the split 10th place, especially when you can see who I put it there. But so far, he has not impressed me for me to put him in top 10. It might change. It's still very, very early on. He's barely been in the game. Right. That said, let's move on to spot number 10. And spot number 10, this time around, I decided to split in between two champions last moment. It was going to go to Peni Parker, which, has been up and down. And obviously, Peni got released, and she was one of the nastiest defenders in the game. And then Kabam released Galen and Hulkling and a whole bunch of different champions that just absolutely destroyed her and made her trivial. And she lost just about all of her defensive value. She was not out as a 7-star for a very significant part of that time. And she kind of lost all of her relevance. Now she is a 7-star. Those champions are not. And she is living better. She's doing more. Obviously, I do think she's way overperforming in the last couple of metas. It will stabilize, but in general, I always have thought that she's quite solid champion, because if you can trap an opponent with a Peni, great. That's like a match for you. She is one of those champions that typically will require a matchup specific, type of counter, or you're gonna have quite bad time, especially, in combination of some other nodes. And she's also capable offensively. Don't forget, she's like a very, very good Nick Fury counter. And in general, that level 1, level 2 rotation is capable of dishing out a lot of damage. Her, immunity to poison always comes into play, as well as her immunity to incinerate. So she is a hazard shift champion. And yeah, I do think she kind of deserves to be there now. And the second champion that I'm going to be talking about is going to be Arcade. Now, I was going to leave him at an honorable mentions list, but I do think his buff, makes him more potent defender, makes him somewhat more viable attacker as well. He does struggle with the selection of matchups, similar to Peni, by the way, against mutants, which is quite weird. But overall, when he works, he is now competent attacker. He's not going to be the fastest one, but he has also got an incredibly cheesy rotation, which I think could be incredibly helpful in some, less than standard situations with his heavy spam, which I might make a separate video about. And I do think he's better now. He obviously was getting some recognition. People were ranking him up for Battlegrounds defense, for Alliance War defense, and some casual questing too, because he does have access to Poison, Bleed, Shock, and Incinerate. And also trip immunity. So there's a ton of utility there in his kit. Especially that if you are not in a major rush, for instance, for Alliance, where you boost up and you have a perfect matchup in Masteries, he's going to do fine damage-wise, and in general questing situations too. So I like him more and more, to be honest. And let's see how he ages. Spot number 9, I'm giving to Jack-o'-lantern. Now this might be low. In fact, so far it does seem to be low, but here is what I am cautious of. He's very new to the game, and currently just about the main competitive experience that people have with Jack-o'-lantern is in a meta where he's supercharged and on absolute boatload of steroids. He is absolutely crazy currently in Battlegrounds, and we haven't really seen him do outside of that. Effectively, I do think he has a potential to be higher, to be much higher, because there's a lot of good stuff in his kit. Especially when awakened, he also gets that Bulwark, becomes tankier and starts regening the energy damage from, Domino and Onslaught, giving him wider variety of matchups that he does even better. But even without an awakening, and he's just crazy. The amount of damage that he can dish out right now in this meta is quite ridiculous. I do suspect that he will be relegated probably to level 1, level 2 type of rotation champion. But overall, I like him. He's quite simple. So far, he's effective. Let's see how he performs in different metas, in different situations. Spot number 8, I'm going to give it to Mike Sentinel. And again, this might be a bit of a personal swear influence, but Omega Sentinel always has been one of those Swiss Army knife champions that I know for a fact a ton of alliances rely on Alliance War for, because she does have access to heal block, which is a requirement for some of the nodes. She does have access to tracking, which completely bypasses miss, which is quite helpful. She's completely immune to nullifies and stuff, and that for a tech champion is extremely rare and tremendously helpful. Unlike Red Skull, she's immune from nullify from nodes as well, not just from champions, so that's kind of like a more complete version of that. And has access to cowardice, and has access to incinerate and plasma, has tremendous amount of damage when you do give her some recall masteries and boosts. And yeah, it's capable of quite a lot, has quite interesting synergies. And yeah, I do think she's much better than people kind of give her credit for, because she's not necessarily the fastest option without recall masteries. At the same time, again, just the sheer amount of utility and versatility, more often than not, leaves me, resorting to her had I wanted to do it or not. And that was for a while when I had her just as a rank 5 champion, and then when I pulled her as a 7-star and took her to rank 2, I ended up using her a ton, ended up taking her to rank 3, and absolutely do not regret it. She has been one of the more pleasant surprises. I do think that if she was available, more freely than she is currently, we would absolutely see a lot more of her. So, keep an eye out for that in the future, as well as she eventually gets to enter the base pool. Right. Moving on, spot number 7, I'm going to give it to Guardian. Guardian's actually getting a bit of a demotion here. And that's despite FAM coming out of the top list. And that is kind of due to the fact that I think 4 out of the last 6 months, Guardian was borderline unusable. I know this might sound conspiratorial. I know this might be wrong and it's just a coincidence. But I swear, ever since Kabam gave out that 7-star Guardian when Kabam Jax was leaving to like everybody, he worked in none of the metas. Like every single instance, he just didn't. There was something absolutely nuking him. Like opponents having like massive energy resistances, or there's just some ability that completely nerfs and nukes him, and he didn't see a light of day for a very long time. Overall, though, now in this current meta, we're seeing him making a comeback as a competent defender, because unless you get rid of his armor up, obviously whenever you use special attacks, it can be auto-blocking, and that's going to be quite a big issue. People are having more and more Sig Stones available to them, and I have seen more and more Sig 200 Guardians, which is like, giving him a significant benefit and boost with that energy resistance and bleed resistance. And overall, he's still, quite nukey champion, and he's one of those champions that you wouldn't necessarily think that is as present, as popular in the game as he is. But if you would look through, a ton of people's accounts, you would see people are heavily investing in him, heavily relying on him, and heavily using him because he kind of feels safe, tanky, and that level 1, level 2, or 2 level 1s and level 2 will get rid of just about everything. And obviously, if you want to have a bit of fun, you can ramp him up and nuke a lot of health in one special too. And Harvester Relic is quite good for him as well, increasing that shock damage. And overall, I think he is, just very, very solid champion. Again, that said, he is taking a bit of a downslide from where he used to be, largely because of the requirements and demands of the game. But hopefully, that's going to change soon. Next up, Shuri. And Shuri actually also has slidden a spot down. And there's absolutely no question she's still an amazing champion. Very great for long form content. Perfectly competent for shorter form content. It's a very, very good counter to a ton of mutants, as well as plenty of champions from other classes. She can be a very sneaky, good Warlock counter with her non-contact attacks, her immunity to build the accuracy reduction. That's still a fairly rare and extremely powerful ability in the game. And the little bit downsides of Shuri, I guess, would be the fact that people have gotten much better at fighting her, so she has lost some defensive value. Kabam also has been more generous with bulwark and effects that let you parry non-contacts or get you alternate openings. And some of the biggest mutant threats, again, being shock immune. That is kind of, I feel like, a victim of, Nimrod getting slowed down. And there we go. Still, however, again, one of the best Atuma counters in the game. Still a very crucial champion for Alliance Wars. And a very good champion to have at your disposal. I just don't think she's quite up there where she used to be in the game. Who knows? Times might change. Moving on to spot number 5, and that is a quite big leap for Prowler, because Prowler is again one of those champions that did not necessarily seem as impressive when he was released, but the more people acquired him, the more comfortable people got with Prowler, the better he's doing. Currently, he's tackling more difficult matchups than just about any tech champion or most of the tech champions. Unlike some of the top options here, he doesn't have too much defensive value, and any defensive value that he had got practically eradicated when he got added as one of the raids fights. But he's definitely very, very capable. His immunity to falter and incinerate, quite handy. His access to his own falter and him, not relying on crits, dealing all of damage via physical damage, lets you bypass a ton of champions that will be immune to energy resist. Because, he does have incinerate that you can kind of do without if you're willing to sacrifice a bit of damage. And one of the coolest things about him is his power control. After the opponent activates special attack power, drain the remaining power and inflict power lock for 1.5 seconds. That's actually so clutch and such a powerful ability that, helps people in a ton of situations. Especially it stops some massive bursts of power that do activate at certain times. And I like that quite a bit. So I think Prowler is currently, living his best life just about. You see him a ton. He covers and counters a ton. Could potentially expect him to climb even higher as more people get, but overall I feel like this is a fairly solid place for him. He's not generally the fastest champion. There is quite a bit of skill expression when using Prowler, so he might necessarily be, champion for the masses. And if you do want to get like a very good solid damage output, then you want him to be at a very high sig, because his sig ability scales quite poorly with sig levels. There's a massive difference from 600 to 4000 critical rating increase. And if he's at like 150 sig levels, that's like 1700, and last 50 sig levels, you know, more than double it. So it's a very, very, very steep curve there. Let's move on spot number 4. And I hate that this guy's so high. Last time around already he got, you know, quite a bit increase, but he's been terrorizing the game. I think it would be no exaggeration to say that Stark Enhanced Spider-Man is a top 3 attacker in generic situations in Valorant right now. Obviously, he's borderline useless on defense. You know, he's squishy. He comes with all of his, you know, old weaknesses and stuff like that. But somehow the man just got more scary and more potent because he, again, does a ton of matchups, does them ridiculously fast, and even the fights that he's not super suited for, he can do, you know, surprisingly well, either with his stun lock or, you know, just spamming heavy attacks or alternating your playstyle. Man, he is putting in work. And that's quite unfortunate because I did not pick him from my CCP selectors because at the time I definitely valued Massacre higher. And to be fair, I do think Massacre was being more present, dominant, and useful, but through the release of, you know, newer defenders that Massacre couldn't do, and this guy can, he definitely has kind of overtaken him, Massacre, which is why I do think that right now, if you are doing CCP challenges, go double Starkey, hands down. I did get lucky enough to pull him as a 7-star myself, and I will likely give him my Tech 7-star Awakening gem, provided there is a meta that, you know, he's going to be very, very good for at some point soon. But that's how good of a champion he is right now. Just about everybody who selected him from CCP selectors has ranked him, and people even rank him up unduped. We're seeing 6-star Ascended Starkey still putting in work, and yeah, the man is doing very, very well. I think definitely top 5 Battlegrounds attacker, without a doubt, potentially even more than that. And that is noteworthy. Obviously, he's still perfectly capable in other situations, not gonna lie. In generic questing, I would not necessarily want to use him because, again, I do have had a lot of issues starting on Spider-Man, and one of the things is that he kind of reminds me of a wind-up toy. I'm not a fan of his ramp up, and which is what you want to do. And if you go questing, you know, pick a Jugs over Starkey. But for like challenge mode and speed and ability to take a ton of different matchups, he's still crazy good. And then obviously he does have plenty of less than common uses as well, thanks to his special attack evade, thanks to the fact that under some nodes and in some metas he can special one lock because he does have guaranteed stun on level 1. So yeah, I think starting on Spider-Man has aged extremely gracefully, and as a 7-star is wreaking havoc in the game, especially Battlegrounds. Now we have Shocker. I think Shocker is the 3rd best tech champion in the game. I know some people would place him as the 2nd or 1st, potentially, but I do feel like he's at the spot number 3. And the cool thing about Shocker is obviously he's unexpectedly solid defender because of his, you know, reduction to the stun timer, so you can't really stun him, and then he gets the double level 1, and his special attacks are super dangerous to punish, and he's just kind of awkward, and then he's gonna go unblockable, and then you need to intercept him, and then if you mess up, he can stun train you, and yeah, it can go bad quite fast. And obviously offensively, whenever he's ranked appropriately, and he's very competent and fast attacker, as long as there's no damage cap or anything preventing you from stunning the opponent, from being able to drop that massive heavy attack, he's going to get the job done very, very well and fast. And yeah, I think he has, you know, incorporated himself in the game very well. Present, people do chase him, people do rank him, people love him. It's a shame that they altered the way he delivers damage on heavy, so he's no longer able to bypass glancing with that heavy attack. But still very capable champion. I think absolutely deservedly is currently in spot number 3 in tech class. And spot number 2 is a champion that just can't go away. It is kind of funny. When he came out, a lot of people thought he's a dud, and the Sunspot is clearly the better champion. But just about ever since he got released, Warlock has always remained to be one of the top 3 tech champions. Top 5 tech champions at the worst, but in my opinion, one of the top 3 champions throughout the entire time he has been in the game. That is quite amazing. He just doesn't go away. And what he's good at is still kind of happens to be. Realistically, at the moment, most of Warlock's value comes from that infection that stops all the healing like all the time, and also power drains the opponent. He does have, unironically, some of the best power control in the game. Like, he's perfectly capable of finishing, let's say, a bullseye of equal rank under 60 seconds, never once allowing bullseye to use a special attack. And it's quite impressive. The best description again of Warlock is a champion that just happened to be. A champion that happened to be doing everything that people need a tech champion to do for the most part. He does have access to, degen through his awakened ability and infections, opponent's healing, but most notably bleed on his heavy attack, shock on his level 1, armor breaks on his level 2, obviously the heal block with the infections, as well as power control. Power control on level 3 and level 1. He is immune to bleed, poison, cold, and frostbite. So quite conveniently, he does have a single hit heavy attack, which comes in handy in quite a lot of matchups when you want to limit the hit count. And that's how he generally gets by. He just has access to a ton of different things that more often than not are quite helpful. Obviously, he can also be quite decent defender, especially if opponents do not have how to get rid of his armor up buff. He's harder to nuke in situations, and immunities help. He's one of all-time Alliance War MVPs, for sure. 100% because of that infection. You can bring him in a ton of matchups and completely dominate those fights. And he's been doing great as a 7-star, for sure. Some additional things that make him kind of ridiculously good is he has one of the highest crit damage ratings in the game. So he has been amazing for the crit me with your best shot metas, or under any circumstances where you can increase his crit rating, like with a stat focus, for instance. And he's just not going away. He's ever so present, and he's ever so dangerous, and I love that guy. And I think he deserves it. I think he has served and is serving well across all of the game modes. And the final one is Red Skull. I don't think that changed. I think for a while Red Skull did have some metas where he wasn't great as an attacker, but he was still competent as a defender. And any meta where he can, like this current meta, he's an absolute menace on attack. And in general, the man's putting in work. He is a champion that you do need to account for. Obviously, he does have counters for him on defense, just like about any other champion. And he's about guaranteed win if opponent doesn't have a half-decent counter. And then, he deals with quite a lot of problem fights. And obviously one of the best Domino nukes. And just in general, very capable, very potent, very powerful champion in the game. It is absolutely no coincidence that currently just about any Cosmic Champion that is coming to the game, just happens to be a good Red Skull counter. One of the coolest things about him I love is the opponent's stun ability accuracy reduction. He can effectively go stun immune as well, which is quite rare. Then obviously damage and his unorthodox power control, access to heal block, access to shock and bursts of damage, as well as power gain of his own while charging with heavy attacks. Just general tankiness, immune to opponents, nullify, fate seal, and stagger from champions. I do not necessarily love this ability. It's obviously great that it is there and it is helpful, but against champions, if it was against like everybody, he would be even better. And then against mutants, he's immune to ability accuracy modification, which again is, making him just about perfect domino counter. So I still think Red Skull is the best tech champion in the game.
Germany takes its rightful place as ruler of the world!
Oh yeah!
A German world!
Yeah, Germinator! I'll be back. Whoa! Yeah! Free beer on this mother Fuhrer. Yeah, come on!
And with that, let's go to the list. Here we go. New tech top 10. Number 1, Red Skull. Number 2, Warlock. Number 3, Shocker. Number 4, Spider-Man. 5, Prowler. 6, Shuri. 7, Guardian. 8 is Omega Sentinel. 9, Jacko, 10, Peni Parker/Arcade. Special shoutouts to Fam, Ghost, and Nimrod, who got removed from the list because they're not out as 7 stars. Additional shoutout to Punisher 2099 and Sentinel, who I do believe could make this list as well. And lastly, I forgot one shoutout and one champion, which is Ironheart. I do personally have a love-hate relationship with Ironheart, and I think she is mid. I really do. I do think she is a good mediocre champion. I think she could have been great, but all of her abilities, you kind of need to work a bit too hard, and the damage is not quite there, and there are a lot of downsides to using her. But it is absolutely undeniable that within the last 6 months, I have ended up using more of Ironheart than I would have ever wanted to. I used her in the Korean CCP challenges. I used her on, Autumn of Agony and Summer of Suffering types fights. And she was, very, very solid in those. I used her in Alliance War and under duress, but still, because I don't like using her in Alliance Wars, but I did. And she has been useful as well, so I did want to point that out. I didn't enjoy using her, but I did, because again, immunity to reverse controls, access to different types of dots, ability to maintain it, ability to bypass miss. There's a lot in there that can be useful. I just wish she was better overall. So, there we go. That is the tech list. Next up is going to be the mutants. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about